Well, there's actually been news on the Bloodlines 2 front, and in some sense positive news. Specifically, I'm referring to the fact that Paradox has decided to walk back their day one €30 DLC to include the clans Toreador and Lasombra. Of course, the big scandal here was primarily that traditionally Toreador was a normal clan to be included in the base game because it was always there. And it's kind of ridiculous to charge €30 for 2 extra clans, one of which should have been in the base game anyway, and then doing it on day one on top of everything else. And a lot of people are upset by this, and I think justifiably so. It's a ridiculous business practice. And now that has changed because they've released their World of Darkness trailer for Vampire Bloodlines 2, which you can see running in the background in this video, and you can also see the different abilities and the different looks of the different clans of the respective fire. Fire, as many have said, is a ridiculous name. Fire. Why would you call your vampire Fire? It's too bad you can't change that name, but whatever. Now, it goes without saying that Paradox did this not because they're particularly magnanimous or generous or they really thought they did wrong by the customer base, but because they might have realized that this was a pretty crappy business move on their part. I mean, charging people €30, which is more than 30 USD, by the way, which is why henceforth I've decided to price everything in my videos in euros because it is more expensive than the American equivalent. Well, they know that's very expensive. They know people were affronted by this. And they also probably realize that that affronting, unfortunately, would cut into their sales, because what's more likely, if you think about it logically? Will people buy a base game, including both of the 2 extra clans, for the normal price? Or will people buy the base game, excluding 2 of the clans, one of which traditionally was a normal standard clan to be included in the base game? And then on top of that, DLC that costs €30. Now, yeah, it might have been the case that people could have spent €30, maybe a select few, whales, if you want to call them that, for this game. But probability dictating all things being equal, probably not. Very few people would have done this. Now, by making this move, Paradox has ensured, at least probabilistically speaking, that more people will pay for this game, at least the base game, because they think it's more reasonable. Now, a lot of people are kind of giving credit to Paradox for this move, and as I just said, this is just purely born out of greed or desire to make profit and just business sense, to be honest. So why should I really give them credit? It was a pretty bad move in the first place, and I don't think that simply reacting in a quote-unquote positive sense to a lot of criticism and negative feedback when it's something you should have done in the first place necessarily warrants praise. So I'm not going to praise them for this. It's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, it's at least nice now that you can play Lasombra and Toreador in the base game. And I'm still very much on the fence as to whether I want to get this and play this, because I just don't have the vampire vibe from this. Yes, I accept the fact that this game is an action game. It could be super fun just in terms of gameplay, but historically, and I just think in keeping with Bloodlines and the World of Darkness, it's not just about gameplay. It's not even primarily about gameplay. It's about choices you make, your builds, this sort of thing. And that's just not in the game, which could be fine. For all we know, it could turn out to be a really good game for what it is, although I kind of doubt that. Now, as you can see, this trailer displays various forms of Fire, the protagonist, with different faces and different looks and what have you. But there's a strange, consistent face no matter what you decide to do, apparently, in terms of character design. So the hair might look different. The jewelry, i.e. the earrings, might look different. The tattoos might look different. The eye color might be different. All these things might be different, but the figure of Fire still carries with him/her this very weird, androgynous, and just unappealing look no matter how you slice it. And I personally can't really get over it. To me, aesthetics, as I've said many times in many videos, is a pretty important thing in video games. And why have a kind of character creator, ostensibly at least, i.e. the ability to modulate and change your character's appearance to a limited degree, and not have any ability to shape the face? Now, the best case scenario here might be that, for whatever reason, this is the standard Fire they're showing off to the world. I don't think that's likely, meaning you will have options to shape and change the face and the way your Fire looks. But I kind of doubt that, and I don't think that's likely. Now, you could say, since this game is first-person action, that it doesn't matter, and I suppose that somewhat mitigates this issue, I guess. But that's a terrible cope at the end of the day, to be perfectly honest. I mean, you don't like the way the character looks, so the fact that you don't have to look at the character in a first-person game makes it kind of better. Yeah, kind of, sort of, I guess. But that just doesn't do it for me. Now, some final commentary on this, because as I said, I'm on the fence. I don't really know. The action could be good. It could be fun. I don't expect this to be a knock it out of the park type of game. We'll see. The final commentary, though, entails the entire IP of Vampire the Masquerade in general. Because there are a lot of people who are saying, well, we should support this game because if it does really well, Paradox might be encouraged to empower somebody else, endorse somebody else to make Bloodlines 3 or the equivalent, some new vampire game set in the world of darkness. And it is true that Paradox stated last year that they're going to go hands off when it comes to World of Darkness. They're not interested in RPGs, and they've decided to delegate the control and the direction of the IP in its totality to a bunch of minions, essentially. And in theory, on the face of it, that sounds pretty cool, right? I mean, who wouldn't want another game in World of Darkness, provided it's done well, and it could even be a proper RPG? But therein lies the rub, I think, lords and ladies, because if, let's say, this iteration of Bloodlines does well, Bloodlines 2, then if anything, the message that's going to be sent, the signal being sent to Paradox, will be, look guys, people like action games that have the name Vampire Masquerade on them. We need to make more of this sort of thing. Now, that doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, but I think it's very likely, all things considered, because that's just generally how things work. These people are not rocket scientists. They're not very subtle in their thinking. They just think, money, money, oh, made money, make more game like this. That's always the case if you look at the broader gaming market. So I'm not very encouraged by the idea of this selling well, and therefore we're going to get a cool, proper RPG down the line. It's possible, and I guess we can always sort of hold out hope for something in the future. Maybe, just maybe, Paradox will have enough brains and smarts to realize we need to delegate this to somebody who's really capable of making a proper RPG. Maybe, who knows, maybe Owlcat. I keep on saying, Owlcat, please make a World of Darkness game. Please make a Vampire the Masquerade game, because Owlcat is the only company we know, I think, that's capable in terms of RPG mechanics and general atmosphere. But on top of that, they're one of the few guys out there that actually works on RPGs in the sense of getting a license from the IP owners and then working on it. We have the example of Pathfinder, we have the example of Rogue Trader, Warhammer 40k, and now they're working on The Expanse, and Owlcat owns none of these IPs, which I think is perfectly fine. They tend to work on established IPs, so wouldn't that be amazing? I doubt that's going to happen. In all likelihood, if this game sells well enough, and Paradox thinks it's worth investing more money in the World of Darkness, which I don't think they will, to be honest, even if it does do decently or reasonably well, they will probably just think, more money, more action, more money. I don't think they're going to think, yeah, we need an RPG and return back to the old school classics or anything like that. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I am remaining cautiously open, not optimistic, but open towards this game, so we'll see. I like certain types of action games. I think the Vampire Power Fantasy by itself could be pretty fun. I'm a big fan of Lasombra specifically, so that being the base game is somewhat encouraging. But no, Paradox does not deserve praise for walking back a stupid business practice that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And based on what I've seen, the game looks okay action-wise, and everything else looks, to be perfectly blunt, like crap. And as far as the future is concerned, who knows? Only the gods know, as I like to say. But as always, thank you for tuning in. And if you like my content and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Be much appreciated. I'll check you out next time. Until then, take care.